Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the fifth in a series of webinars focused on leveraging economic incentives to support capital investment to automate and integrate your production warehouse, integrating ERPs, WMS, IoTs, automation systems, AI systems, whatever you need. We have the answer for you on how to ensure that your capital investments are economically feasible with economic incentives. My name is Jim DeVries. I'll be the host of today's webinar. With us, we have guest panelist Gary Marx from BlueCap Economic Advisors, founded in 2015. John Cosgrove from Atlantic Handling Systems, founded in 2005. Dani Kaplan, SMC Data, founded in 1980. And again, I'm Jim DeVries from Enhance International Group, been around since about 2016 with this company. So again, this is the fifth of our series of webinars where we bring in experts, and we thank Gary for being with us. Our next webinar will be next month on optimizing factory operations. We look forward for you being here to join us for that webinar. With that, I'd just go right to the deliverables today. We're going to get into addressing challenges of site selection, including production challenges of choosing your site and getting those incentives for production warehouse automation. We'll be getting into gaining insights on knowing when to leverage incentives and how to do that again, and then maximize those incentives to reduce capital costs in your current facility, and then when and how to capitalize that technology with John and Dani, and then we'll get into the case studies on successful ventures down this line. With that, I turn it over to John. John?
Thank you, Jim. Really happy to be here today with my esteemed colleagues, experts in this field, and continuing this series where we try to help people, with the growth of their companies. So Atlantic Handling Systems, we're going into our 20th year. I've been in the industry for over 45 years. What we do is we provide and design, sell, and install material handling systems, conveyor systems, and storage systems. We're a division of a company called Mayberry Material Handling. And between Mayberry and Atlantic, we are one of the largest material handling companies in the Northeast. We offer a building layout department. We do in-house project management. We help you with your permits, and we're ready to help service once we're done. So we design, sell, and install systems.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Gary Marx with BlueCap Economic Advisors. As Jim mentioned, BlueCap is a 9-year-old consulting firm located in Flemington, New Jersey. We specialize in corporate site selection and economic development consulting. We work closely with manufacturers, logistics, distribution, and life sciences companies throughout the United States to help identify new project locations and negotiate state and local incentives to support their investments.
Sorry about it. Good morning, Dani Kaplan. I represent supply chain software for manufacturing distribution food. It's a single database software that has warehouse management part of it and enables you to a distributor by manufacturer and by the manufacturer by distributor, and the food can be both manufacturer and distributor. It's a fully integrated system with analytic, warehouse management, and supply chain.
Thanks, Dani. And a little bit about Enhance International Group. We are focused on being your relationship master integrator with all the partners like what we brought together here today. And what we focus on today is, of course, facility infrastructure and building and invest to grow your organization to maximize capabilities, especially in this changing age of implementing AI solutions and automated solutions. So it's fantastic that we have Gary here to show how you can take an advantage of economic incentives to help you to build and invest to grow your company. With that, we'll get right into the agenda. Again, we'll get into these challenges of site locations, including production warehouse automation. And Gary will provide an incentives overview. We'll get into the strategies to take into account when selecting production warehouses, Gary will, and then we'll get into best practices with some case studies. And then we'll close it out with, of course, the financial impact, how it hits your bottom line. With that, again, we'll get into the challenges, and I'll just go through some of the challenges that we see today. The first challenge being automation adoption. Right now, 40% of the manufacturers have implemented some form of automation since 2018, but this still lags the capabilities, especially when we're getting into the onshoring and reshoring. And manufacturing is coming back to America, which is great. It's coming back a new way. And so are you ready for that? Do you need to upgrade your current existing systems? Do you need to move to a new facility? How can you make sure that you survive and thrive in the years to come? The capital investment, automation related investments in the US have surpassed 10 billion annually, dominated with AI and AI applications. So just a bit of warning here, when you're doing AI, make sure you're not looking for a shiny object of something it could be. Work with vendors that are actually have applied AI in similar situations as you're encountering for your upgrade of your facility. Productivity gains, there have been excellent productivity increases, up to 15 to 30%, but of all the AI implemented, as McKinsey said, almost 90% of them fail, just like McKinsey says 80% of all ERP implementations fail. That's why we brought together the strong team that we have here, with Dani with his ERP, John with automation, and our AI partners, Creatosoft and Arvist and Data Speckle, to make sure that if you're going to implement these things, that you're implementing with partners and providers that will provide you your best bang for your buck. Then environmental benefits, of course, is another area on the technology trends. Automation combined with digital twin technology has helped companies reduce energy consumption. So digital twins being used in the energy consumption, Creatosoft has a solution in that area. So we have quite a number of partners that are focused on that, and I'll open it up to the panelists here to make your comments on this.
Well,
Jim,
Jim, yesterday we had a live seminar that we did with our AI partners and our digital twin partners, and the majority of system integrations that fail, it's because the communication between the partners doesn't work. So one of the reasons we formed this conglomerate is so that we know people we work with, and we have a great team here that we've assembled when it comes to AI. Dani on the ERP, WMS side, my company doing automation, and yourself, Jim, with your expertise in supply chain. And today, Gary is going to help us, which is really important when you're choosing your site selection for where you want to be and have your company grow.
Gary?
Yeah, thanks, John. I'd like to add too, if I may, manufacturers should be aware that as they're making these types of investments or not making them, this is something that states do look at, knowing that if companies do not continue to invest in their plants and facilities and in technology and equipment, those facilities are going to eventually become obsolete. And the company may then be making the decision to move out of that state and town and city. So anytime an investment is being made in new technology and equipment, companies should consider incentives and support from the government.
Thanks, Gary. Dani, your thoughts?
It's important to have ERP software that's integrated. As John mentioned, if you have multiple vendor, AT&T blame Verizon, Verizon blame T-Mobile, and T-Mobile blame God. In the meantime, the inventory is out of whack. So having integrated software is very, very important, and having reliable vendors.
Absolutely. Thanks, Danny. And it's all about, I like what John said about the teamwork. We've been working together to form this group, and EIG has over 60 partners that have been working together to make sure when you're doing these types of things, you have a team that can work together for you, the customer, and provide you that provide you a way to meet your goals. With that, I'll turn it over to Gary here on identifying some the reasons why government targets manufacturing for economic incentives. Gary?
Yeah, so thank you, Jim. Really, almost all states target manufacturing for incentives and to try to attract them and keep them in their area. The infrastructure costs, it becoming more and more costly to build or expand a new manufacturing facility. The cost ranges from $210 to $800 per square foot. Just looking at a facility of $500 a square foot for a 100,000 square foot facility, that's $50 million. So, so as far as incentives go and site selection, it's a very costly endeavor. The Economic Policy Institute, this has been a long-standing fact that for every manufacturing job created in an economy, an additional close to 3 new jobs are created elsewhere within that area. So it's a strong multiplier and a large impact that manufacturing has on a community. Manufacturing, again, has the highest multiplier on the economic sector. For every dollar spent, another $2.74 is spent elsewhere in that economy. And so, as technology advances, it is an advantage to a community to bring in new skills to the community, to give their residents the opportunity for new jobs and skill development. It is also a fact that there has been some reduction in jobs due to advanced technology with automation and an increased productivity. But we find that's occurring mostly at the middle skilled jobs, and the higher skilled jobs and lower skilled jobs have not been too affected so far. But there's still a lot of following of the impact on the job market from advanced technology.
So, John, you're putting on your many different hats that you have. What do you see, in your town aligned to these statistics?
Yeah, what I see is my community, where I happen to have been the mayor for several terms, we're seeing some manufacturing coming back, but we lost a major bakery, a Nabisco bakery, which is going to Mexico. So that 600 jobs were gone. But I think what we need to do is that's why someone like Gary is so valuable. We need someone who is aware of all the economic incentives provided by the state that can help you to keep your business, here in the United States, or if you're going to move, if you're building a greenfield, he's a guy who can really help you. And then on a rework or a retool, where your building is existing, he may be able to help you get monies that can help you to help us automate or help Dani provide the technology that you need to make yourself successful.
Yeah, I think what I find interesting is it's not just greenfield, but brownfield opportunities here, right?
Yeah.
And that's where we sometimes get lost. Everybody wants to build new.
Well, as a former government official, the whole thing is to try to attract new business, but also to retain the existing business. and especially manufacturers. Because Gary just explained all the benefits to a community if you can continue to keep your manufacturers there.
Excellent. With that, I think we'll just move on to the next area. Great dialogue there. And Gary will bring us through on the incentives overview. Gary? Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot. Before we get into the incentives overview, we wanted to get your feedback on what the challenges you have in leveraging economic incentives. Looks like we have a few entries here. Gary, your comments on what you were seeing here.
Yeah, sorry, Jim, just opening my chat now.
Can you see the screen? What are the challenges to leverage economic incentives? In the screen, it shows getting started, awareness.
Oh, I'm sorry,
upgrade of
sure.
government, applicability, eligibility.
Yeah, I think that you know, some of the challenges that I see with clients, and I agree with these here. Getting started is just how do you start the process? You know, you want to open a new facility. You're not sure where it should be, how big it should be, how you're going to pay for it, and just how do you create the awareness? How do you find out about where there are government incentives or a local incentive? So these are the things we'll get into. A lot of my clients are just afraid of government, and you know, it's not the IRS we're going to talk to. We're going to talk to the Commerce Department, and bigger projects will get up to the governor's office, and they're actually trying to help the company. They're trying to bring the jobs and capital investment to their state. So I consider government a friend. They help us through the process, and it's really, you know, nothing to be worried about or afraid of. Um, and determining the eligibility and the applicability of a particular incentive to their project. Are they going to be eligible for it? And how do we determine that? So these are all the things that I try to help my clients through at the very early stages of a project. So these are, I think, some of the challenges that we see in companies getting started with the incentives process.
So Jim, I think what this states is that people cannot not afford to hire Gary because you know, they leave a lot of money on the table, and they also don't get the biggest bang for their buck. So you know, I think you have to bring in someone like Gary if you're going to do this kind of projects, because they know, you know, everything from logistics to government grants, so on and so forth. So you really need to have somebody as your advocate doing that.
Thank you, John.
You're muted, Jim.
You need somebody like Gary because this is it's complicated. Every state is different, every town is different. To really take advantage of it, you need somebody who keeps up with that. And Gary, you've even done some international work over the years, is that right?
That's true. You know, sometimes it's not choosing what state to locate to, it's choosing what country to locate to. So I've had a couple of very interesting projects in Eastern Europe and Latin America.
Yeah. So Gary, with his vast experience over the years, can provide a lot of input for you. Any other comments, Dani, from your perspective?
It's important when you choose a place to build your warehouse. It's important to find out how close is the highway to it, because the trucks need to go to the highway, and that's a major issue if you pick up the wrong spot. Another issue is employees issue. What the availability of the employees in the area, and what the rate is for the different states have different rate employees. So those are all important factors you have to look into before you jump into the water.
Great advice, Dani. With that, I'll We'll go back to, I'm sorry.
There we go.
There we go.
Yeah. So when it comes to the incentive value, the criteria that states are looking for in assessing what the value of a project is to their state and to the local economies is, one, the number of jobs to be created, and we're looking at permanent full-time jobs. In addition to the jobs, the average wage is becoming more and more important to a project, the amount of capital investment in the facility, in the building of the facility, and then the equipment and the technology going into the facility. And I'll also add to this, the location varies greatly. As an example, there's in the state of Georgia, near Atlanta, Georgia has a job creation credit that if you locate within the city of Atlanta, the amount per job is $1,250. If you go just a short distance outside of Atlanta into a more rural area, the credit goes up to $4,000 per job. So incentives are very much adjusted as the location changes. And most of the companies that I work with, it's generally the CFO that is the facilitator of projects. I'll talk a little bit more about this later. But I find that when we do the initial incentive estimate for a company, before we really even start the project, that estimate is being used by the CFO to get his capital plan approved to do the project. So for him to go in and say, we're going to spend $50 million on this new facility, and here's the amount of capital incentives that we might get to support that capital investment. So even just the initial estimate is important to the company and getting their capital plans approved. And also at the bottom, it's not just new facilities. But I mentioned before, if plants aren't upgraded, they'll become obsolete. So existing facilities and expansions of facilities are also eligible for incentives. These are some of the triggers that lead towards incentives. Oftentimes, real estate decisions. We're outgrowing our facility. The lease is coming to an end. Do we stay where we are now? Do we relocate? We don't have enough capacity here. Should we open a new facility somewhere else? The job creation, retention, transfer. A lot of companies don't realize, and I had a project a few years ago where a company was located in Kansas. Their facility lease came due. They decided to move about 15, 20 miles to another facility that they owned. But in doing so, they crossed the state line into Missouri. We said to them, guys, that's 90 jobs going to Missouri. That's an economic development project. And we secured close to $600,000 in incentives to support that, basically shifting employees from one location to another. Reverse offshoring, nearshoring. A lot of manufacturers we see are diversifying their manufacturing and moving some of it back from China. Nearshoring is not coming all the way back to the US, but maybe placing production in Mexico, for example. Changes in leadership can change the direction of what a company is doing, and that may lead to incentive opportunities. So there are a number of triggers we call that might lead to incentives. If anyone has any other experiences that they've seen that have led towards an incentive package, I would be curious to see that, if you wouldn't mind placing it in the chat. These are, again, a few more of site. These are the site selection factors. Basically, the areas that I evaluate from companies for companies when they are looking at different states for facilities. Workforce is always at the very top of the list and top of concern. Are we going to be able to hire the people we're looking for? We want to hire 500 new people as an example. And if the areas we're looking at all have a 3% unemployment rate, are we going to be able to hire the people we have at the price we want to pay with the skills we need? And if not, what types of assistance can the government provide to help with that? Proximity to suppliers, customers. Dani, you touched on that a little bit before. That is a great consideration in where they choose. Is it a business-friendly state? Are they going to support our project? Is the political environment pro-business, or are we going to have difficulties as time goes by? State and local tax structure. Again, how are they going to be taxed differently in Ohio versus Illinois or Indiana? Transportation infrastructure of highways, airports, rail, all of that factors in. Utilities. Are we going to have reliable electric service? Do we have redundancy? If the power goes out, will we be able to draw power from another direction? Telecommunications, and then finally economic incentives. So some of the types of incentives that we secure for clients, cash grants and tax credits are often applied towards job creation. Property tax abatements help with some of the ongoing property taxes. Infrastructure grants are important. As Dani mentioned earlier, companies, if they're not close to a highway, I had a situation once where an industrial park was about 1.5 miles from the interstate in Pennsylvania. And along the way to the park from the interstate, there was a hairpin turn that was very difficult for 18-wheelers to maneuver. And the company was looking to build an addition, and we were able to secure for them an infrastructure grant to extend water lines for fire safety. And we were also able to get the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation to straighten out that roadway to help trucks. And, part of it was to an industrial park. It wasn't just my client. It was something that benefited all the companies in the industrial park. So oftentimes it's not just the incentives that are available for capital investment or for job creation, but infrastructure of roadways, utilities. We've sought a grant in Connecticut for an environmental cleanup, a $4 million environmental cleanup. So there are a number of things we can look at. Again, training grants is another popular incentive to support job creation, and fast track permitting, at least knowing that the government is behind the company in looking to fast track the permit that they can meet their construction schedule.
So Jim, I know that you, Jim, that you have, Jim, I know you have extensive background here in New Jersey with the EDA. I know you work for them. Can you explain what a pilot is to people? Payment in lieu of taxes. In New Jersey, a lot of pilots are given when you're going to build a complex or a warehouse.
Yeah, one of the things, John, and it's a good question. One of the things that companies like is predictability. Permitting is another one. Permitting can be 6 months to 2 years or longer. But a pilot, payment in lieu of tax, is a negotiated agreement between a municipality and a company that it can be for a 10, 15, 20-year period of time where a company will pay a certain dollar amount in property tax. And that gives them predictability that they know from year to year they will pay a certain amount of tax and they wouldn't be subject to tax increases along the way.
And I know permitting, we have to permit on our side. And, it's become more and more stringent and harder to do. And it's something that, you need someone like you to help guide us through those tough waters. We do it every day. But you need a partner who really knows how to work within the system.
Yeah, that's true. And another thing, John, with sales and use tax exemptions, a lot of times, that's factored into, oftentimes the sales and use tax will be during the construction period, which includes the fit out of the facility. So when, you're looking at racking systems and conveyors, all of that can be sales and use tax exempt.
Right.
So that certainly helps companies with that investment.
Yeah, Gary, one question that I see here is around other things that can be done to the community to enhance the community as part of this infrastructure. Does that happen very often, or is that a rare occurrence to actually build parks or, fix things that have been
Buy
ailing?
fire trucks.
Yeah,
Fire trucks?
sometimes, some states and communities have been known to, well, as an example, New Jersey is part of their current incentive program that supports job creation. If a project is $10 million or more, which I wager majority of them would be more than that. The Economic Development Authority requires state to negotiate some sort of contribution to the community. It can be for parks or streetscapes or provide laptop computers to elementary schools, high schools. There are a number of creative things that can be done to satisfy. And I think most companies are community related and do give back to the community versus and supporting various charities and whatnot. But there are times where things like that can be done. And later in the presentation, there's a slide that has, as a part of negotiated incentives, I've had, a company request a bus shelter be placed in front of their building. And also they were expecting a lot of their employees to take public transportation. The local bus route was 2 or 3 blocks away. And we were actually able to get the local bus company to reconfigure the route so they drive past that building and the bus shelter. And I'm sure that bus shelter was used by some of the company's neighbors in the neighborhood and other companies that were nearby.
So Gary, we had a situation when I was the mayor of my town where we had a mixed residential retail use and they wanted to move in. And what happened was to meet their affordable housing component, we went to court and they were able to give us the money and we went and purchased another piece of land and we had 84 units of affordable senior housing built, which was a win-win for us, for the community, and the complex is very, very successful retail and residential, high-end residential.
That's a great story, John.
Yeah, love these stories. Excellent. So with that, we'll move to the next section on strategies to take into account when selecting your production warehouse facility. Gary, lead us the way.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. Yeah, so what I like to try to do with the number one here is what's needed to make the project work. So I first start out with reviewing all of the company's needs. What are they looking for in a new facility? And that goes into the incentive offer or the request that we're making for incentives. And then we look at the various buildings and sites that they're looking at and any deficiencies, anything that we can add to a typical incentive package. When you bring a project to the state, they're going to make an offer based on their 2 or 3 leading incentives. And we always try to see, well, what does this project really need, whether it's classified as an incentive or just what else can they do to help with the project. At the time where jobs and capital investment are in play and companies are looking at more than one state or municipality to place a facility, now is the time to ask. So I've had companies, look at a building and the area, and the road was filled with potholes. They say, can we get this road resurfaced? And that was done. Roadway upgrades, utility lines extended. We've touched on these a little bit before. Rail extension into an industrial park, and that happens quite often. And if, again, it's to an industrial park and more than one company can tap into that rail line, more likely will be the case where the railroad company will pay for that extension. So these are all things that we try to do to stretch out the project, to leverage the incentives and get a little bit more that not only helps the companies but helps the surrounding businesses and the community in general. Accurate information, when we're putting together that summary of the project and collecting information from the company. If a company goes into a meeting with the state and says, we're going to create 200 new jobs, the state's going to say, okay, well, we'll give you an incentive offer based on 200 new jobs. That becomes the company's commitment going forward, that they're going to get incentives based on them creating 200 new jobs. Well, if the information received from HR includes part-time employees, interns, or out-of-state employees that are not going to work at that building, and now you're looking at 150, 160 employees, and the rest are not eligible, it's going to be very difficult for companies to meet their commitment. So we really have to push back and make sure the information supplied is accurate. And I can't tell you how many times I'll get a list of employees and I see California and Texas, and well, we're talking about a New Jersey incentive, so these people are not going to contribute to the New Jersey economy. Likewise, in researching available programs, looking at the legislation, creating the programs and the statutes, got to do your homework. I find what I call gold nuggets all the time down in the fine print of a program, of an incentive program, that can either increase the benefit or extend the life of the incentive if they're doing certain types of activities. And again, a lot of times we've been able to increase the incentive amount based on some of those fine print items. We also compare, similar to residential real estate, we'll compare our projects to others that have located in a given area. And the job numbers, the capital investment, the average wages are not going to be the same, but you can do pluses and minuses and at least identify programs that other companies have received. And that helps, particularly in the very early stages when we're doing those initial estimates of giving that CFO an idea of what the value of incentives might be. And then it's always important, I say all the time, if you're not doing the compliance work, you're not going to get what's been offered to you. And when I was with the state of New Jersey, we looked back a few years, and close to 50% of the incentive programs that we approved, the companies never did the ongoing compliance and never received a dime of the incentives. So having that type of process in place to do the annual reporting and actually collect the benefit is critical.
Thanks, Gary. And leveraging incentives to proactively manage risks, your thoughts here?
Yeah, so, I always tell my clients that, your job commitment is going to be based on the job numbers you're giving the state, as I just mentioned. So, I say you want to be proactive enough that you're maximizing the benefit. Too often when it comes to job creation, capital investment, companies underestimate the numbers that they're going to create. Capital investment always goes way over the amounts we give to the state, and the same can be true with jobs. So if we use, say, a 200 job number, a lot of companies will end up creating 250, 300 jobs and not getting the benefit of those additional jobs. So I say let's find the number that is the highest number available, but a number that you're fairly certain you're going to commit to. So is that 240 jobs? Is it 250 jobs? But it's that balance. Also on the jobs front, maximizing the resources available at local community colleges, tech schools. So many of them around the country are very proactive in designing programs to meet the needs of manufacturers. Some of them will even go out and buy the equipment that a company is going to be using so that they can train their employees at the community college or tech school to learn how to use that equipment. Infrastructure upgrades, just making sure that when you go into a building, that the current infrastructure of utilities and highways is going to meet your current needs, but also your future needs. And then supply chain, we've talked a little about reshoring, proximity to your suppliers and customers. We oftentimes map these out for clients that are looking at, 3 or 4 different states. And we'll also look for, when you're analyzing communities, are there any industry clusters? If I have a client that's in the aerospace industry, are there other clients within that industry? Dani, I don't know if you have any comments on supply chain.
I do have some comments about it. Trying to bring my screen back.
And I'll just mention too that, again, being a good corporate citizen in the community, we've touched on that a little bit. And I always tell companies to over communicate too with the government. Again, companies are afraid of government in general. And even if it's bad news, it's always better to share the information. We're going to go through a layoff. Well, give a heads up to the state that they know this is coming. It's going to be better than if they find out by reading about it in tomorrow's newspaper or their news feed online. So, Dani?
Yeah, in reference to reshoring the supply chain issue, the trend was at the big when it decided to go with offshore manufacturing, cheap labor overseas, and job left America. What's happening today with the Red Sea issue, we have a reverse. The cheap labor overseas get counteract with late production, late inventory delivery, which result in supply chain shortages. A good example is if you go on Google, you see that in a Reuters report in the beginning of the year, Tesla and Volvo stopped production of certain cars because parts came late. The reality is, if your inventory comes in late, production disruption or the cancellation, which result with warehouse space issue, because we went from shortage of inventory to excess inventory. So that's a brand new reality we're facing now.
So Danny, that's a good argument for automation and using your WMS, because people are bringing in more goods because they're afraid they're going to run out. And what we need to do is be more efficient at the storage of those and the picking. And that's what we do, Danny and I together, between automation and his technology, we can help you to be more productive that way.
Another issue is you ship your order late, you get penalties and you get returns. The warehouse gets overflown with returns, extra labor costs, and where do you put the inventory? So you need John's automation to sort the inventory quickly, what can be sold, what cannot be sold, and where to place it. And having the racking system is very important factor.
And that's a huge thing in e-commerce today because of the regulations of companies where you can send things back. 25% of all women's clothing and shoes come back because they'll purchase two sizes, try one on, and if they'll use the one they like, and they send back the other one. So returns have become a big issue within warehousing and distribution.
Excellent discussion, guys. Just looking at the word cloud, we have a few more thoughts brought in by our participants here. Any comments on what you see here, Gary?
Yeah, afraid of government, I see again. The size of business is important. It's going to lead towards how big of an incentive package might be.
Yeah, engage, I see here, which is interesting. You know, how to engage with the right people, not being afraid to talk.
I think that's key. Engage government because, you know, when it comes to anything as far as grants or permitting, especially on permitting, you have to engage the officials and you need some professionals to help you because in the end, you get to the 11th hour, you want to open up, and all of a sudden you find out all these things that you were supposed to do and you didn't do, and it's going to delay, you know, and it's going to cost you money. So that's where I think Gary, myself, and Dani, we can help you with that kind of thing.
Absolutely. Thanks for participating in the polling. Appreciate it. Keep your questions in the chat throughout the rest of the webinar. We'll be closing the polling now. With that, we try to go to the next section if my computer will cooperate. There we go. Best practices and implementing incentives. Gary, take it away.
Yeah, so for best practices, this is when I meet with a new client, I try to establish this type of structure with meetings. Typically, the CFO is the champion. All of these in bigger companies, they will have all of these various departments here listed on the right. And I try to schedule regular meetings, including all of these departments. And you know, some companies it's quarterly, others it's monthly. I had one client that wanted to meet on a weekly basis and just get HR and operations and real estate, government affairs, all talking to each other. And in doing that, it's amazing how often we find new projects. As an example, with the project I mentioned earlier about the company moving from Kansas to Missouri, that came out of one of these meetings. This is my Bill story. The real estate director was this gentleman named Bill, and the third time we met with this company, Bill wasn't there. And so we said, you know, where's the real estate guy? Where's Bill? Oh, Bill's in Missouri. We own a building there, and we're going to be moving people from Kansas to Missouri. And again, that was a project, and we would have never found out about it if we didn't know, you know, if we weren't sitting there with the company and know that Bill was absent that day. So it's all about communication within the company that helps identify new projects. And you know, we start out working with the CFO and the real estate person, and sometimes tax, And while we're starting to put together what the project's going to look like, they're also starting to reach out to people like John and Danny for what they bring to the table too. So all of this is the beginning point, and we prefer to find out early on here versus when they're about to sign a lease somewhere and they call up and say, can we get incentives for this project? It's not going to happen in that short amount of time.
Yeah, I love this collaboration, cross department collaboration. Probably maybe the first time they all got in a room together, Gary. It's
It
brilliant.
works.
It works really well. I found that works very well for
And
a lot of
smaller
different
companies
things.
may only have 2 or 3 people,
Yeah,
that fit into these positions, but I still try to do the same thing with them. And
that's
it's
great.
amazing, when I hear what they're working on and what they're doing, the types of activities those triggers is what I'm looking for. And they say, really, we can apply for incentives for that? So it happens all the time.
You're opening up their eyes. Fantastic. With that, Gary, you have a 5-step process. I think is pretty very interesting. Bring us through it.
Yeah, so the first is site selection. Move on to that slide. Again, we talk about creating a project profile where I try to put together a summary, part for my own use, but just part, in what is developed into the presentation that we use with the state. We include the number of jobs, the capital investment, the locations they're looking at, average wage. I'll include, what some of the thinking is behind the project. And that actually becomes a reference document over time so that, I've had projects where 5 and 6 years into the compliance period after the project's completed, where we're strategizing on the current employment level, we're saying, well, let's go back to the application and what did it say that, what did we tell the government back then we were going to do? And so we use that all the time. But site selection generally starts with 4 to 6 states for review. And it's very much a process of elimination. We go through, and as we're identifying the strengths and weaknesses of each state, it really becomes apparent a couple of them are not going to be strong enough for this particular project, and they're eliminated. And we try to get down to the final 2 or 3 projects. So once that is done, the real estate broker will start looking at at buildings and sites in each market for the project. While they are doing that, I'm assessing each of the locations that they have. I mentioned before in Georgia, one location will have a $1,250 per job credit, where another project may have $4,000. As the company's evaluating each building, I'm giving them feedback on what the incentives would look like in each location. And that gets all worked into what our incentive ask may be, as far as what the needs are and where they're looking at. And that process is about a 1 to 3 month process of starting that. The incentives negotiation is a 6 to 9 month process, and that's where we're working with the state to negotiate the final incentives, complete the application, and seek the approvals from the governing agencies within the state government. Permitting and approval, again, can range from 6 months is the earliest I've seen in Florida, to some of the northeastern states can be 2 years or more. But part of the discussion that we have with the local communities, if they know that the states are involved in this project and it's an economic incentives project, sometimes that helps move through to get the incentives, or I'm sorry, the permits in place to match the construction timeline. And again, while the building is being constructed, I'm assessing our project facts, making sure there are no major changes to our job numbers or the capital investment. Um, we're looking at, tracking investments for sales and use tax exemption. So as John is putting in, the racking systems and conveyors, we're assessing every piece of equipment going into that building to make sure it's captured. Um, and then government officials are pushing ribbon cutting ceremonies and coordinating groundbreaking activities, and that's all a part of that process too.
So this fits real well into how the three of you guys work together. So Gary, maybe just a high level overview, and John and
Yeah, so
Danny.
thank you, Jim. Stage one is kind of a repeat of what I've just been discussing, but while we're assessing sites and real estate search and all these other activities, over on the other side, there's the step 2 and step 3, and I'll toss that over to John.
Yeah, what's really important for us is in between where you have the real estate search and the negotiations, what we really need to do is come in and lay out a proposed project and a system for them so they know exactly how many pallets they're going to store, how they're going to pick, so on and so forth. So when we're ready to go, we can do permit and approvals. And this has to be done, up front. You really need to get it there. If you wait till you do all the other things and then try to, if you build the building without laying out the system, you could get in trouble because you may not be able to put, you may need to store 20,000 pallets and you may have a facility that you'll only be able to store 10. So these are, that's when we really need to get very, very quickly into it. And then, of course, what helps is, of course, Danny with the WMS can help with the location and how to pick and so on and so forth.
Danny?
Having integrated software, sorry about that, my picture keeps going off. Having integrated software with warehouse management, it's a very important issue. Generally, people make a mistake of buying a standalone warehouse software, and then what you have is an integration issue. When there is upgrade on one software, there is broken links, and each vendor blames the other vendor. So it's important to have complete integrated software and another issue is when you go into digital AI, digital twin and AI, it's very important to have clean data. We had a seminar, we have a conference yesterday, an AI conference and warehouse automation that John arranged, and the two speakers kept breaking up the subject of having maximum, how important it is to have clean data. Otherwise, garbage in, garbage goes out. And if you want to use digital information successfully, you must have clean data from the ERP system. Otherwise, you have corrupted data.
I think
Thanks.
just to bring everybody up to date on the digital twins, what that is a constant analysis that is being run on what you're doing and can help correct in real time what you're doing and can help you to streamline your operation.
Yeah, and linking this back to Gary and his system is if you're building a second or third warehouse, having a single ERP platform with the SMC data and having that ability to quickly adapt your current other facilities with the new facilities is a real powerful tool here that makes SMC data stand out. So
another issue is if you don't have integration issues between all the warehouses, one warehouse might be overstocked, the other warehouse might be understocked. The understocked will buy more inventory. while you can ship the inventory from the overstocked warehouse with a common carrier or transfer it to the understocked warehouse. In today's reality of supply chain issue, it's a very important factor.
Yeah. With that, a little bit overview on your system, John.
Okay, this is exactly what I was talking about before. You know, if you have a building and you think you're going to select it and purchase it, we need to lay it out like you see in the drawing on the right, where this is a traditional pick pack operation with what we call pick modules with conveyor. We can build those in 1 level, 2 levels high, 3 levels, and sometimes even 4 levels high. And then we also can show sortation and at shipping and receiving. So we have the integration then of our controls. Our controls are PLCs, which are program logic, which runs my conveyor and all of the automation, the packaging throughout the warehouse. And then we tie that in with Dani's WMS from his system, which will let us weigh boxes on the fly, will help us to tell what size carton to use, so on and so forth. So it takes a lot of the guesswork out, and it increases productivity a lot, which you'll see a little later in the presentation.
This is the overview picture of the whole enterprise that company represent VI. It has distribution, it has manufacturing, it has a warehouse part of it, has an analytic that tells you what to buy, how much to buy, and whom to buy. It's very important to pick up the correct vendor. The cheapest vendor is not the best vendor if they have unreliable shipment, because you have production disruption or the cancellation. Another issue is the retail module. What's a better way to get excess inventory than a shopping mall? You sell it at a discount and you free the warehouse space and you improve your cash flow issue. Having the warehouse integrated is a very important issue. Otherwise, you have multiple vendors. And then the side benefits is the mobile customer can order on the phone. When it means delivery to the customer, like UPS or FedEx, the customer signs up and the signature goes to the host immediately. And any rejected items are being automatically refunded. E-cameras is part of the software, and as you can see, it's all integrated software under one package.
Thanks, Dani. With that, we have a few case studies to kick us off with. Gary?
Yeah, thank you, Jim. So a client of mine that I've done a number of projects with, this example is a 200 square foot new production facility, 200 new jobs. We were looking at New Jersey and Pennsylvania. They had already done the site selection work. So this was just a pure incentives negotiation. And they ended up choosing New Jersey because at the time, New Jersey had a very strong incentive that was approximately $16 million over a 10-year period of time. And while they were finalizing the real estate, they decided to switch the project further south. They were headquartered in Florida, and they thought that if they looked at Virginia, that would be closer to Florida, that in the case where there was a hurricane or somewhere that would incapacitate their headquarters, they could shift operations to Virginia quickly. So I did 2 labor studies for them in Virginia of the Charlottesville and Richmond areas. Again, when we met with the Commonwealth of Virginia, the leading economic development person asked the CEO, "What keeps you awake at night?" And without hesitation, the CEO says, "Labor. Where am I going to get labor from?" So that led to the work that I did with the labor studies, and the state offered several assistance for that. Then COVID hit, and there was a lockdown. The company quietly put a smaller facility in Pennsylvania to support what they were planning to do in the New York, PA area. And I recently started working with them again to place that that production facility in northeastern Florida. And interestingly enough, in Florida, food production is not a targeted industry. So there was very little incentives at the state level, just a few local incentives we could pursue. And that just shows the difference between what they would have received in New Jersey versus what they're receiving now in Florida.
John?
Okay, before Gary spoke about Georgia, and we had a client who came out of New York City many, many years ago and moved into the Meadowlands area in New Jersey, and they wanted to lower their costs and get their wages down. So they decided to look in Georgia in the Savannah area because there's a port there. So what they did was they moved down to Savannah area. We did a design and helped them automate, and the return on their investment was great. It was a greenfield project, and we did do all of that, what I spoke about before, where we did the design up front, so they knew exactly how many pallets, they knew what automation they were going to use, even before they signed with the real estate company. So the client did their homework, and they received all the benefits they could from the state of Georgia and local government, and so it got a great return on their investment.
Excellent story. It looks like a fun place to work. Just looking at the website. Dani, your Romark story, please.
That's a typical M&A story. When M&A happened today, the bankers worry about the investment, the money. The accountants looking at the financial numbers, and the lawyers worry about the contract. They all forget about a small issue called multiple ERP systems. That's a case study of a worldwide manufacturer, plastic manufacturer, that decided to buy these distributors to lower the cost. They ended up with 3 ERP systems, and inventory dropped to 90% on the raw material and finished goods. Moving to a VRI system company represent for 25 years, they achieve 99.95 accuracy, and their video is on my website under videos, starting with the executive through the warehouse manager, discussing the life before having 3 systems and life now under 1 system.
Excellent story. Real classic. Thanks, Dani. With that, we're going to close it out on the financial impact. And let's just start here with John.
Okay, the automation, what we talk about is we're trying to enable the workforce and get more efficiency and lower our cost, which is something that Gary helps us do by examining that and what the labor costs are in the different areas. We with the automation try to increase productivity. We get a 10 to 30% rate based on how the people use it. We actually, what really helps us with that is Dani's WMS, his warehouse management system, which is the intelligence for my automation. We get a lot more accuracy by using automation. We use pick the light systems, which can bring us all the way up to 99% accuracy. And now with AI and the digital twins, we can get even higher than 99 to 99 point whatever. And we get higher throughput, of course, because we now, instead of people serpentining through warehouses and trying to find goods, we're bringing the goods right to them. So, and of course, space utilization, as Gary can tell you today, to make sure that you have buildings that have height, because by using your height, you're really maximizing your cube.
Dani?
WM having integrated software of ERP and WMS, the first thing you eliminate is multiple vendors, which create integration issues when there is an upgrade on one software. Another issue is having real-time information. You need to know what's available after you allocate for production and future orders, what the net inventory is. By having the information, you know when to buy and how much to buy, and you control the inventory better. If you cannot do it, you have chargeback and cancellations and warehouse space issue. RF designs can go both ways. You can use an RF design for $3,000 or $4,000, or you can use a smartphone that requires no training. In today's reality, it's a very important issue with the labor issue. And integration is very important because you have the warehouse in part of the system. And if you use artificial intelligence, you must have accurate information. It was very stressed yesterday at the warehouse conference we had. Having clean data is essential. And the list and not the less is multiple location inventory. If one location is overstock and second location understock, ship a common carrier or transfer the data over. Not having the information, the understock will buy more inventory, while the overstock inventory sits there and affect your cash flow issue.
Gary?
And for the incentives, the return on investment capital goes up when incentives are introduced. And that's because incentives influence, an impact on the initial capital investment and also reduce the ongoing operating costs. So that will drive the ROIC up.
Well, as you can see, this is a fantastic package of how three of our best partners here can work together to help you with your upgrading of your current facility, looking for new facilities, really jam-packed value proposition here. So with that, we're closing out the webinar, looking at our deliverables of addressing your challenges, gaining some insights on incentives. Hopefully you're more comfortable with incentives now and how to integrate those into your current and future facilities, and then how to capitalize on the new technology, AI technology, and leverage John and Dani and of course Gary to get you there. With that, we will be having a webinar in about a month on optimizing factory operations. More on that later. And as we close it out, I always ask John to kick us off. John?
Yeah, I just think it's exactly what you just said. You know, the combination of the four of us, we can help you with the integration and get you from one point to the other, which is very, very important. It's going to save you a lot of money. And, you know, most people, especially CEOs, you're running your companies, you need to rely on professionals to help you to attain this and get the scalability and growth that you're going to need to build these type facilities.
Dani?
The new reality we're facing now of the Red Sea and company leaving China because long delivery and inventory shortages, companies are coming back to America. So choosing the site, using Gary's services, what state, what place to do, and what county is extremely important, because you can utilize not only bringing manufacturing back to America, but get from the local state benefits another state will not give you.
Gary? You're close.
Yeah, thank you. And I enjoyed the opportunity to spend time with you guys this morning and look forward to continue our interactions. I think that, this is a very specialized area. People say to me all the time, I never met anybody that does what you do. And I think that, I see too many companies leave dollars on the table when, if they have experience and a process behind them, it just maximizes and brings that extra value to their projects, and in a lot of cases help make the project get approved and happen.
Yeah, just to build on that, again, thanks to all of you for being panelists today, John, Gary, and Dani. Very informative, very interesting. I think what, really my big takeaway here is, when you're doing infrastructure, there's a lot of saying, well, we need to wait for interest rates to go down. We need to wait for this. We need to wait for this. It's no time to wait now, guys. Time is now. We're reshoring. If you're not building up your infrastructure, your competitor is building up their infrastructure. They're taking advantage of this. They're implementing AI into their new facilities or upgrading their current facilities. And all these technologies have a high ROI, from Creatosoft and who we heard from and Arvist in our last two webinars. And there's really running out of excuses on why not to upgrade your facility and to expand. So we look forward to supporting you on that road. We have those capabilities here with Gary, John, and Dani, and others. So please join us and reach out. Thanks so much, and have a great day.
Thanks, Jim.